Good morning. You know, when I first discovered the gospel this morning and that I had responsibility for it, I thought to myself, after I'd gone through it and read it, I thought, you know, in the future, when I get the list of availabilities for our preaching group to go forward, I'm going to pick mine first rather than last. This is very simple, right? I mean, it's the mustard seed. It's a parable. We all know the story. Everybody knows the story. But then as you get into it, you got to deal with faith. And that becomes a little more diverse. You know, the parable tells us, God says, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, which is really tiny, if you have that kind of faith, you can say to a full-grown mulberry tree, uproot yourself and plant yourself in the sea. Yeah, well, that's not going to happen. I mean, even metaphorically, that ain't going to happen. Not with us anyway, I don't think. So all of a sudden I'm dealing with something here that really becomes interesting when you look at it. Because, you know, you can look at other parables. You can look at the parable of the seeds in different kinds of ground. That's simple. You can look at the Good Samaritan. That's simple. You can look at the lost sheep. And all are pretty straightforward. However, the mustard seed's a little more diverse. And it forces us, first of all, to define faith, and secondly, to see what must go along with faith and how faith becomes active work for us as Christians. Now, faith is a belief in something not seen, not totally understood. We hear stories through the Bible, and we believe them. We have faith in the love and the grace that God has given us and shows us, even though we can't see it, even though we can't touch it. We still believe in it and have faith in it. And then we look at trust. What's the difference? Is there a difference? Yeah. Trust is something that we put our emphasis on with things and people and ideas that we can see, that we can touch, that are actually there. And that's a lot different. Faith centers on believing God's truths, and trust leans on those truths in real situations. You know, when I was working back in those days, I spent about 40 years flying somewhere in this country every week. And to a point where I flew almost 4 million miles on American Airlines before I retired. And so I was getting on planes all the time. Now, every time I flew, I had faith that the weather would be good, that the flight would be safe. I had faith in that, even though I didn't understand weather, and even though I really didn't understand how airplanes flew. But I did have that faith. And then when I got onto the plane, trust kicked in, because I saw a pilot and a co-pilot. The pilot had 4 stripes on his shoulders. The co-pilot had 3 stripes on his shoulders. And I knew and I trusted that these people had been through a lot of training and a lot of experience in flying the airplane and working with that piece of equipment. So that's where trust comes in, following faith. Now, as we look at this gospel, the disciples have seen a great deal through the Gospels of the last several weeks, if you look at them. A lot of parables. They've seen the prodigal son. They've seen the lost sheep. They've seen Lazarus and the rich man. And at the beginning of this chapter, just before today's gospel, Jesus tells them that there will be stumbles in the path to God's kingdom. But he says, woe to the one who causes these little ones to stumble. It would be better for you if a millstone were hung around your neck and you were thrown into the sea. Wow. Now you're a disciple and you're hearing this and you're thinking, my God, can I do this? What's expected of me? What does he want me to do? And so the next verse begins the gospel, where the apostles said to the Lord, increase our faith. We can't do this. You need to increase our faith. Well, Jesus answered immediately and said, you don't need much faith. Things can happen if you have just a little bit of faith, enough faith of a mustard seed. And if you have that much faith, wonderful things can and will happen. Now, I believe that we live in a world today that puts a real strain on our faith. We watch as our world becomes more homophobic, as it becomes more sexist. We see little or no empathy for the poor and the impoverished. There is so much hatred and so much division. And we're losing our rights to free speech. We're losing our rights to a free press. And on and on. And now is the time to realize that the next thing that God asks for is for us to hold on to our faith and to work for more trust and to become active in the work that we do in our faith. And we need to do that. Now, St. Andrew's community is already exceptionally good at doing this work. We do the work that God has called us to do in so many ways. We do work with the food banks. We have our own food market out here. Our work with area schools. We welcome and support all of the LGBTQ plus community. We have involvement with and support the Interfaith Alliance. Our work with the Dinka and the Darfur communities, and the list goes on. And we can be extremely proud of that. Now, there's always more work that we can do. We can contact and talk to the people in power. We can write them, we can call them, we can talk to them, and have them see and understand God's world as it should be, rather than as it necessarily is. We also are moving into a time right now in our own church that allows us to do more work in God's faith. We need to look at how much faith we have. One of the things that we've got coming up is the stewardship campaign, which we're going to begin right away. And this is an important way that we can act on our faith. God has given us this facility to work with and all of the land and stuff that goes with it. He's given us the power to do the things that we are currently doing. But we always need funding because we have more dreams. We as a people of faith look to the future, see the hope, and we want to act on it. And that's not something that can automatically happen without support from the parish and the church. So you see, it doesn't really matter how much faith you have. It's what we do with the faith that we have and how we put that to work. You don't need to increase your faith. Just the tiniest bit of faith, that of a little teeny mustard seed, is all that we need to work to change the world and to bring God's kingdom to this earth. Amen.